I was jogging along the path between my small office and my house about 2 miles away. It was an impromptu run. I was disappointed with some of the work-related materials that were sent to me in a very incomplete state. After about an hour of fiddling with it, I slipped out of my jeans and work shirt and into shorts, a t-shirt, and sneakers. A pair of sunglasses, a headband, and I was off. I was going to run to my house to get some paperwork I needed, maybe 20 pages. When I was about half a mile from my house, I noticed a guy about 200 yards ahead. This was a little unusual, since this path really only led to my house. They hardly used it. There was a cliff that led me to the back of the house. The guy in front of me cut this piece off. It led nowhere but to my dead end and to my back door. I quickened my pace. I turned a small corner and looked at the guy. He was at the back door to the patio of my house. I watched him open the door. It wasn't locked. I stopped to think about what I had seen. I knew that my wife Alice was working from home that day. I ran to the door. It was locked. Of course, I had the key and I used it. I quietly pulled back the patio door and looked inside. There was no one in the kitchen where Alice usually works. Some of her work documents and laptop were lying on the table. I heard a noise upstairs. Muted. At the entrance from the dining room to the kitchen, I kept a baton, like the ones the beatnik police used to use. It belonged to my grandfather when he was actually a patrol cop. It was protective, but it also reminded me of him, the man I adored as a child. I took the baton and crept upstairs. The floors were carpeted, and this was not a problem. The door to the master bedroom was closed, and sounds were coming from there. The sounds were muffled, but I assumed they were sexual sounds. I grabbed the door handle, and when it turned, I carefully opened it. Imagine my surprise. The runner's clothes were lying on the floor, and he was just about to climb on top of my wife, my completely naked wife. I walked up to the bed and hit the guy on the ass with a baton. Loud slap. He screamed and grabbed his butt. Alice looked with wide eyes, wide arms, wide legs, wide eyes. She shouted something. I recognized this guy as her boss, Simon Green. He rolled off Alice and stood up from the bed, holding his butt. Stop. I was invited. I looked at Alice. She said absolutely nothing. Simon said, "You better put it back, or I'll take it from you and kick your ass." He was bigger than me, older, about 40 or so in my 30s. I heard that he was into martial arts. He seemed so confident as he threatened me, standing there naked with pale skin in my bedroom. I didn't know him very well, and he hardly knew me at all. One thing he didn't know was that I spent a lot of time playing tennis. I had a great backhand. I smiled at him. This seemed to drive him crazy. He roared. I mean, it was a roar like a wild animal. He lunged at me from about 6 feet away. I hit him in the face with a backhand. He didn't have time to duck. The baton hit him on the right side of his forehead. I was aiming for the cheek. He must have tried to duck as he walked towards me, and his head tilted down slightly. That's why the baton hit him on the forehead. He fell like a bag of cement. He didn't even move when I looked down at him. I looked at Alice. She was in some kind of trance. Her eyes were glassy, and drool was running down her chin. I looked around the room and saw a cell phone on the dresser. He was in an upright position with the screen facing the bed. This son of a bitch filmed everything. I picked up the phone, switched it so I could look at the telephone panel, and dialed 911. What happened to you? My name is Tim Jenkins. I'm at my house at 12 Arbor Circle. A man was in my house, in my bedroom. When he attacked me, I hit him. I believe he is seriously injured and needs immediate medical attention. Besides, my wife is here, and I think she's here, I don't know, on drugs. Something. She is conscious but unresponsive. We have people on the way, sir. If you are armed, please put your weapon down. They will approach your home with caution. Please understand this. I understand. I'll meet them in the front yard. I heard the sirens and went downstairs. I kept the phone with me. The line was open. I put the baton on the sofa. I walked out the front door. I was standing in the middle of the front yard with my arms at my sides when a police car pulled up. An ambulance followed. There were 2 officers, a man and a woman. They got out of the car, but did not take out their pistols. The woman, who seemed to be of higher rank, asked, "Are you Mr. Jenkins?" Yes, they are up there. See us off. I turned and walked back inside, and the officers followed me. I led them to the bedroom door and stepped aside. The door was open. Alice was lying on the bed. She looked into space. Green didn't move at all, that much I could tell. A female officer knelt next to Green and checked his pulse. She told another officer to call paramedics. Then she looked at Alice. She asked, "Ma'am, are you okay? Ma'am?" No answer. The doctors arrived and I moved away. They worked feverishly on Green. The second group of doctors arrived. The police officer, Sergeant Leslie Haddon, removed the robe from the closet door, lifted Alice from the bed, and put on the robe. She led Alice into the guest bedroom. She looked at me and pointed down. "Go there. Don't leave, but stay out of the way." I went into the kitchen and looked around. I downloaded the video from Green's cell phone onto a small computer I kept in my desk drawer. Then I downloaded the entire contents of the phone into another file. I emailed the video to my office. Then I turned the thing off and left the phone on Alice's desk. I watched from the kitchen doorway as the ambulance guys carried Green out the front door, loaded him up, and sped off. A policewoman I had never seen before ushered Alice into the living room, away from me. Alice walked, but didn't even look up from her feet. She was wearing a robe and some sneakers. Sergeant Haddon entered the kitchen with the plainclothes detective, a thin, older man, John Dempster. She introduced him to me. He and I already knew each other. My legal practice was now primarily civil, but I had been doing criminal defense for some time, and Detective Dempster and I had a few cases together. I liked him and thought we got along well. "Hello, Tim? I'm sorry this all happened. Do you know the person you hit?" "My wife's boss, Simon Green." "Do you have information about his place of residence?" "We have his clothes, sports equipment, and credit card, but no ID." "I don't really know him at all, John. Last I heard he was married and had kids in school. This was maybe a year ago." "Did you have any reason to believe that he and your wife had sexual relations?" "No one. Up to this day." "Tell me how it happened, please." I went through everything from my decision to go for a run to relieve stress and pick up some paperwork to calling 911. I didn't really miss anything. I had no reason to do this. "So did you recognize Green when you were outside?" "No. When he rolled out of bed, that's when I realized who he was." "You hit him on the ass." "Yeah. I didn't mean to cause any real harm, but I wanted this guy to get away from my wife no matter what she wanted. But then you hit him again. Why?" "Like I said, he told me to drop the club or he would take it and beat me with it. Then he roared and rushed at me." "Roared?" "Yes, Now I guess he was trying to scare me." "He succeeded. I didn't aim at his forehead. I aimed lower. He must have ducked down or his head dropped lower." "Fine. Well, your wife isn't involved in this. We are testing her for the presence of psychoactive substances. I believe that when she comes to her senses, she will confirm what you said." "You know, John, this cell phone belonged to Green. I believe he videotaped the sex. All the struggle may be there." "Why is he down here?" "I used it to call 911 and then left it open when I went outside to wait." Dempster asked a crime scene technician to answer the phone. I asked him what would happen to Alice. "I'm not sure. Let's go have a look." He and the sergeant and I entered the living room, where Alice was sitting with a uniformed officer and a medic. Dempster asked the doctor, "What's wrong with Mrs. Jenkins?" "We're going to take her to the county hospital as a precaution because she seems to be in shock. Her vital signs are fine." I looked at Alice, and at that moment she looked at me. A tear rolled down from her right eye. "I'm so sorry, Timmy." Then she seemed to fall into a trance again. "Alice, Alice." I was a little pissed when she disconnected again, but she didn't answer. A few minutes later, she was taken away in an ambulance. I changed into the clothes I had in the basement and followed us in our car. The police were in the house, but I was assured that they would lock the house or at least leave someone there. I called Alice's parents, who lived one state away, about 2 hours away. I gave them the short version and told them I would call from the hospital. Alice and I got married when she was 21, fresh out of college, where we met. I was 1 year away from graduating from law school. Alice immediately got a job at Simon Green's insurance company. It was a large company, and he was one of the 3 owners. She worked her way up steadily from clerk to administrative assistant. She was assigned to Green's department, housing and automobiles. I attended company events with her and never noticed anything between the two. That was the first time I met the Green family. She has now worked for the firm for more than 6 years. I thought our marriage was strong, that is, until today. I had little doubt that the relationship I saw was consensual. So unless he somehow managed to drug her, this would most likely end our marriage. Given the circumstances, I didn't understand how he could drug her. There was no time. I thought she was waiting for him, probably naked, and she left the back door open. I wondered how many times this happened. I loved Alice. She was pretty, cheerful, and kind. Our sex life was very good. Even when I was busy, we still found time, at least on weekends. And now that I've largely given up criminal trials, my work has become much more predictable. I didn't understand what I was seeing. Green was a bigger man, but from what I saw today, not bigger where it would make a big difference. But I only took a glance. Who knows? At the hospital, Simon Green's wife was in the emergency room. I recognized her, but she didn't seem to notice me. I left everything as it was and asked about Alice. They allowed me to return to the compartment where she was. She slept. I looked at her a little. I was lost. I couldn't believe she did this to me, us. I had a deep need to understand what happened before I made difficult choices. A pretty woman dressed in a white robe entered the small room. "I'm Dr. Moore. Are you her husband?" I nodded. "What's wrong with her?" "She had some kind of trauma, mental trauma. She had a shock reaction that made her, well, pass out. She didn't fall into a stupor. When she wakes up, it is very likely that she will come to her senses and become normal." "When will she wake up?" "Maybe 3 to 4 hours, depending on the dose we gave her." "Thank you, I'll be there, I believe." "Fine." She was about to leave, but I stopped her. "What about Simon Green? How is he? Are you related?" "No, just an acquaintance." "Well, I shouldn't, but he's in a coma, medication-induced. He has a very serious head injury." She left. I thought about Green. I believed I killed him. And now, maybe not. More. I called Alice's parents and reported what I had been told. They decided to come to us, but I talked them out of it. I told them that Alice most likely had sex with her boss and that she and I needed to discuss it. Her mother, Joni Carson, said, I've been thinking about her for the last few months. She seemed different, worried. Please give her a chance to explain everything, Tim." "Oh, I'll do that. I promise. It doesn't seem to do any good, though. We'll just see." I went looking for Mrs. Green and found her in the ICU waiting room. I approached her. "Hello, Mrs. Green?" "Yes. Do you want to say something?" "No, ma'am. I'm Tim Jenkins. My wife Alice works at your husband's company. It seems they were together." She was quite tall, slender, brown-haired, in her early 30s. She asked, "Together?" "Yes, they were naked in my bedroom when I came home this morning. This kind of intimacy." "Ah, you're the guy who hit him." "Yes, sorry." "Sorry, I'm not sorry. Okay." Simon has been strange lately. This got me thinking. He didn't play children's sports like he used to. He claimed that he was busy at work. I think he was busy with your wife. I don't know that for sure, except for today. But they, of course, quickly got down to business. Like they had a routine, maybe. What did the doctors tell you about how he was doing? They said neither one nor the other. Although he may have surgery soon. Well, good luck to you. Will you take your children? They are with my parents. They know he's in the hospital. Nothing special anymore. I went outside to get some fresh air and maybe clear my head a little. I decided not to make any decisions until I heard from Alice. I stood there for an hour and went back inside. Alice was in the same room of the emergency room, behind a curtain. I walked in on her and she stirred, but was still sleeping. I sat down in a chair and dozed off. I woke up when she started meowing. Oh, Her eyes flew open. She looked at me and closed them again. She started moaning. I went for help. Dr. Moore was at the nurse's station and I waved to her. She quickly approached. She seems to be waking up, although I'm not sure if I should be there when she does. She saw me and just passed out again. Wait here. She entered. I could hear, but not see. How are you, Alice? Can you tell me? Alice answered her in a weak voice. God, I'm sorry. Alice, we need you to be fully awake. You need to accept the situation, whatever it is, and move forward. Detachment simply cannot last long. I'm going to let you go this afternoon, maybe in 2 hours. Fine. Where's Tim? He was here when I first woke up. He thought you would have reacted better if he wasn't here, although he is somewhere nearby. I wonder how long this will last. I screwed up big time. What about Simon? Is he okay? Tim hit him. We don't know if he'll be okay or not. He'll probably have to have surgery. Damn. Well, I told him not to be so adventurous. It was a bad risk. He lost. I bet I do too. Maybe you should talk to Tim. I'm sure I can find him. Or maybe it can wait until you get home. I opened the curtain and went inside. Alice, I'll take you home. I hope soon. After that. Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry. We will talk. I turned to Dr. Moore. When can we leave? Now. I'll start filling out the paperwork. We'll give her some medical clothes. She left. Alice said, I'm so sorry, Timmy. Sorry, it's just not a big deal. You have to understand. When we get home, Dr. Moore brought her a medical form. I left the stall while she was changing. She seemed to take this as a refusal. And so it was. I had no desire to see her naked. Maybe never again. They put her in a wheelchair as I pulled the car to the exit. She got up and got into the car. We didn't speak for the 10-minute drive. Her tears flowed, but she did not cry. I opened the front door, and we walked into what was our happy home. There were no police there. There wasn't even much clutter downstairs. Alice sat down in the rocking chair in the living room. I'm going to check upstairs. I'll be right back. I ran up. It was a complete mess up there. In our bedroom, there was a piece of carpet cut out that green fell on. I guess I will do some research. The bed was stripped down to the mattress. The drawers were pulled out, but not fully closed. I decided to tidy it up later. The other rooms were fine, except that there were traces of fingerprints, powder, in the bathroom. I wasn't really looking forward to talking to Alice. I called her parents and told them she was home. They breathed a sigh of relief, but wanted to know if they should come. I didn't know what to say. I gritted my teeth and went downstairs. Do you want something? Coffee? Water? Alice looked at me when I asked. No, nothing. I sat down opposite her on the sofa. We sat facing each other, about 6 feet apart. What happened, Alice? I thought we were fine. What? It's hard to explain, Timmy. I've worked for Simon all these years. I've always liked him. No, sexy. But in the last month or so, he started flirting. He made little comments about how good I looked. Sometimes he touched me on my arm or shoulder. I was surprised. Then he invited me to lunch. Just us, he said. But didn't you think about all this big change in attitude? And didn't you think it was strange? Maybe a little bit. She looked down. I was flattered. And he's quite attractive. I found myself interested. It took me a while to admit this. So, you knew that he was trying to seduce you and you... What did you decide? See what happens. She put her head in her hands, but she raised her eyes again. And what? At this point, I was sure we were screwed because it wasn't a case of her being tricked or drugged. She wanted this. And we went to dinner. I asked him why he was doing this now after all this time. He said that he always wanted me from the very beginning, but suppressed this desire. This was his phrase. Alice. Why? What's wrong with me that you were open to him? You're okay, Timmy. He said he wanted me so much. He said he wants me much more than you. I was old hat to you. New for him, exciting. Just the thought made me horny. Why didn't you talk to me about this? What would I say? That I'm thinking about cheating? For more excitement? I never thought about it. How many times have you had sex, Alice? Not once. Today was supposed to be the one and only day. But you showed up. I was scared when I saw you. I saw your face. After you kicked his ass, you looked at me with such contempt. Not even hatred or anger. Exactly the same as at first. A quick glance and then you hit him with the baton. I thought when she said that, the cops should have talked to her first. Fuck them. I had to do it. He rushed at me. I saw, but it was so quick and final. Alice, I don't believe you about this being the first time. I saw him come in through the back door. The door was not locked, and it didn't take me long to get inside and upstairs. But you were both naked and he was about 2 inches away from fucking you. You wanted this too. So, I think you've done this before. No, Tim, Simon and I kissed in his car 2 days ago. We felt each other out. But I didn't let him go further. I told him that he can come to our house after you leave for work. All this seems so unlikely. Think if you saw what I saw, what would you believe? Oh, you have to believe me. Or maybe not. I just don't know how to get you to accept what I'm saying. And now, I will never be able to accept what you say. What should I do? Tim, I love you. I don't like Simon, he made me want him. How? He is so strong. He says what he wants. He wanted me. And you obviously wanted him. Alice, I want to really think about this right now. If I decided to do anything now, we would be heading towards divorce. I can never forget what I saw. Fine. But please remember, I love you. I'm so sorry you're hurting. She blurted it out while sobbing. I turned and left. I went upstairs to our home office. I started looking through materials from Green's phone. Alice's phone had been receiving quite a few calls since about 2 months ago. The calls always came in the evening. He wouldn't have to call at work. There were also texts there. They always talked about lunch. They seemed to go to lunch together about twice a week for 5 weeks. Since Alice worked from home 3 days a week, this meant that every day she went to work, she had lunch with Green. I decided to watch his video. It all started when he followed Alice up the stairs. She was wearing a short robe. She entered the bedroom and immediately threw him onto the floor. The video wavered for a second as he placed the phone on the dresser and pointed towards the bed. You are beautiful, Alice. Exactly as I always imagined. Thank you, Si. She was sitting on the bed. He took off his shorts and shirt. He was excited. I just want you now. He said this with some force. Alice lay down on her back and prostrated herself in front of him. She said, Okay, come on, do it now. I want it too. He jumped on the bed, and then I opened the door and hit him. The sound on the video was great. You could hear a loud slap and his scream. I watched it all the way until I picked up the phone to call 911. Based on the video, I wasn't sure if Alice was telling the truth about it being the first time. Maybe. But, of course, she was looking forward to her intimacy with Green. Maybe it would only be one time like she said, but I doubted it. He was her boss. I went into the living room and told Alice that I needed to go back to work to close the office. By that time, it was already past 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I jogged back. Now I really didn't care how Alice felt. I felt less overwhelmed and more angry than before. I shut down what I was doing when I went for a run. I looked up the divorce laws in our state. Adultery was a ground for divorce, although it was not often used. There was no fault in this. This could be done after 6 months of separation if a separation and property agreement was signed. But if one party didn't sign the contract, it would take much longer, maybe 18 months. Tim wasn't sure if he wanted to divorce Alice, but he was sure he wanted separation. He drew up an agreement. It basically said that they would separate, live in different places, and split their finances. She will provide for herself, and he will be responsible for himself. There will be no sexual contact between them. In addition, what is most interesting, each promised not to have sex with other people. If one did this, it would free the other, and the divorce would take place as quickly as possible. I printed 3 copies. I walked home. Alice was preparing dinner. There wasn't much spaghetti with meat sauce, salad. She was wearing a tracksuit and no makeup, barefoot. She looked at me timidly. I said, "It smells good. Thank you. Can I help?" "I can handle it. But if you want carrots for your salad, they're in the refrigerator." I chopped up some carrots and threw them into a bowl. We ate in relative silence. There was red wine, and they both had a glass. We washed the dishes together. "Let's go to the living room and talk." I saw that Alice was scared. I followed her inside. Alice spoke in a quiet voice. "Tim, I want to say again how sorry I am. I want to try to understand how I could have been so wrong. I decided that I needed to see someone. Everything is fine. But now I think we need to break up. I'll find an apartment nearby. You can stay here. I don't feel comfortable staying here. Now." "You are sure? I feel so guilty. Do you want to get a divorce? So shall we part?" "This is a step towards this. But I haven't decided yet. I just decided I needed some space to think. I wrote a separation agreement. I handed it to Alice. She read it to the end, with tears in her eyes. Silent tears. I've already signed it." She looked up at me. "Can we wait a few days to do this so I can arrange for my mom to come here?" "Well, I can wait a little." "Agree on it. Why don't you do it, and tell me?" "Tim, I meant what I said. I'm going to counseling. Maybe you can come if the consultant asks." "Maybe. I really love you, Alice, but I'm confused and very, very angry. It feels like I'll never be the same as I was." "Me too. But you did it. Who I thought you were, you are not. The point is that you got caught. But you are the same person. You're just not who I thought you were. Not the woman I loved." Then she burst into tears. I didn't make the slightest move to console her. "The woman I loved would never do this. You are not her. Maybe you're basically her. Maybe not. I feel like our whole life together has been a sham. The only question is, how much of a sham is this?" I went upstairs. I grabbed my belongings from the master bedroom, enough to get me through the next day, and moved into the guest room. The next day was a working day. I hardly slept. I got up early, got dressed, and went to work. I went out around 9 a.m. and bought a McMuffin. I was surprised that I was able to work. I sent several emails, copied notes in the judge's office. Then I began to take apart what I had. When I got into it, I forgot about Alice for a while. Maybe this is how I will have to behave during separation. Over lunch, I looked up apartment rental information. I called one just 2 blocks from work and made an appointment to look at it the next morning, Friday. The day seemed to fly by. When I thought about it, I decided it was an escape mechanism. I started walking home at about 5:30. We rented a 3-bedroom house. The lease expired in 2 months. We lived there for 4 years, and this place began to feel like home to us. But now, it's no longer for me. I walked along the treadmill and entered the sliding back door, just like the day before. Alice was cooking. She had fish stew on the stove. It smelled great. She was a very good cook. I was fine. I greeted her as I walked inside. She looked at me. "I cooked fish stew." "Yes, I felt it." I smiled at her. "Thank you. I'll change now." As we ate the stew, Alice said, "My mother will be here on Saturday. Have you found a place for yourself?" "Maybe. I'll look at the apartment tomorrow. We can sign the papers tomorrow evening. I won't be there on Saturday anyway." "It doesn't have to be this way, Tim. I promise you that this will never happen again. I promise." "No. Obviously, promises can be easily broken." She looked at me intently. There were no tears. "You know, you let your hurt feelings get in the way of common sense."